The power of personalization with sequential advertising, the importance of quality written content, and comparing the differences of feature-focused messaging with aspirational value propositions. That and more on this episode of Advertising Influencers.
Advertising Influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.
Hello. My name is Ander, and on behalf of the entire team here at Instapage, welcome to episode 3 of Advertising Influencers. As the folks behind the most powerful landing page solution, my team and I are on a continual mission to lower the cost of customer acquisition, part of which is bringing you the stories of CMOs, VPs, and marketing thought leaders from Silicon Valley and beyond about how they break through the noise and navigate crowded markets to get the right message to the right people at the right time. Last episode, we featured Andrew Dumont, VP of Marketing at Bitly, with some of his thoughts on the degree of personalization and predictability that can be achieved through a sophisticated paid acquisition strategy. And in this episode, the all-star lineup continues, this time with a consumer-focused product, and our guest, Yuriy Timen, head of growth at Grammarly, a company transforming computational linguistics and machine learning into an advanced writing improvement tool. And what's especially cool is that they basically bootstrapped their way to become one of the most popular and perhaps the fastest growing Google Chrome extensions. I'm actually a huge fan of the product myself. And of course, acquiring 8 million active users is not something that happens without extensive testing, quality content, digital advertising, and a deep understanding of modern marketing methodologies, which is exactly what Yuriy is going to share with us momentarily. On that note, let's head over to the Grammarly office in San Francisco and go say hello. It's always a pleasure to meet the marketers behind a product I use every day, and that's what I'm doing right here, right now in the Grammarly office in San Francisco with Yuriy Timen. Yuriy, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Of course, Ander. Happy to be here.
So before we dive into your expertise, the secret sauce that you have, and other things of that nature, let's just hear a little bit about you. Maybe the 30-second professional journey that led you to here we are at Grammarly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been doing sort of startups, tech, marketing, growth for probably the last 8 years. I started out on the agency side where I kind of got a crash course in PPC, affiliate, a lot of different performance marketing channels.
Good place to start.
It's probably the best foundation that you can get. And then as of probably about 2010, I've been working in-house. So I spent some time at a company called Driver's Ed, which did online driver's education courses primarily for teenagers. I started my own consultancy, spent some time consulting in parallel. Prior to that, I actually started out in finance. I had sort of like a 1.5 to 2 year stint out of school in finance. Quickly realized that wasn't for me.
As a number of people sometimes do.
Right. Yeah. a little bit too rigid and
sure.
Not a ton of room for creative problem solving, which is sort of what I love probably the most about tech and about startups in particular. And the way I ended up in Grammarly actually is they were one of my consulting clients, right? So I did not think or plan to join the company or the team full time. Spent about 3 to 4 months consulting for them, and that really gave me an opportunity to understand the team, to understand how unique and powerful the product was. This was back in probably late 2011. And really understand that we have a product that meaningfully impacts people's lives, which is non-trivial and really important to me. And I also understood the huge potential. There are north of 2 billion English writers around the world, and we believe that our product can and should be used by all of them. So in 2012, I sort of made the plunge and came on board. I was essentially the first non-technical hire, the first business hire, also the first San Francisco hire, co-opened the San Francisco office with our CEO.
So you've really built this marketing operation from the ground up.
I've been very fortunate to sort of be put in that position. But yeah.
let's talk just a little bit about Grammarly, what it is. I talked a little bit about it in the introduction to this official interview here, but you guys have Fortune 100 companies on board. Lots of universities are using you guys. What else can you tell us about Grammarly?
Yeah, absolutely. So Grammarly it's a smart writing application or a writing improvement tool. At the core of what we do is grammar checking, right? So we built the world's most advanced grammar checker and automated proofreader. But we also started venturing beyond objective right versus wrong, effect versus effect, put a comma here. And we're now doing things like suggestions around clarity, around readability, around effectiveness, around vocabulary usage, around tone, style. We're using deep computational linguistics, machine learning to really understand massive amounts of data to really help people improve their writing in a variety of ways, right? So we like to think of ourselves as sort of a smart writing application for all levels of English written proficiency.
Gotcha. As somebody who came here and helped open your office in San Francisco, I imagine you experimented with a few growth channels off the bat. When did PPC, when did digital advertising really come into the mix? What was the story behind that?
Yeah, great question. So when I joined Grammarly, we had already been pretty active in paid search and dabbling a little bit in display. That was sort of our bread and butter and pretty much our only digital paid channel at the time. We had some consultants running it. So one of the first things that I did here is sort of took it in-house. That was kind of priority number one is to, we're spending quite a bit there already. Obviously nowhere near to where we are now. But,
yeah, of course.
But still, yeah. So we had already had some basic PPC stuff in place, but a lot of our campaigns needed to be audited. There was kind of a lot of expansion opportunities, et cetera.
You say that a lot of the campaigns had to be audited. What were some of the observations that you made kind of right off the bat, and maybe some of the quickest wins that you found when you found opportunities for optimization?
Yeah, so you're taking me way back here, Andrew. But from what I recall, there were a lot of opportunities around campaign structure, making sure that we have the right keywords mapped to the right ad groups, cutting out a lot of excessive spend. We had a consultant running our account without a ton of guidance, and there wasn't a lot of oversight from our end, so there was a lot of excessive spend. That was something that we needed to kind of get under control. Refreshing our creatives, getting a testing program in place where we're regularly and consistently streamlining copy tests, targeting tests, etc. Establishing a relationship with an account management team at Google and Bing, letting them know that they have a point of contact. We want to be considered for all the different betas that are coming out. At that point, our account was already pretty sizable to garner that kind of attention. It was just that we didn't have sort of a DRI internally to drive that.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And you mentioned something that I would love to talk about, which is A/B testing. We all know as marketers how important it is to always be testing, looking for those opportunities to improve your conversion rates or whatever your KPI is. And it's actually something that you've written about. As far as the ROI on the time that goes into a test, what would you say is one of the most important things to A/B test when you're running PPC on AdWords?
Any kind of testing program or testing plan needs to start with kind of a baseline analysis, right? It's hard to tell where the biggest opportunity may lie, whether it's on the ad copy front, whether it's on the landing page front, right? You really need to understand your entire user funnel and see where the biggest potential gaps lie, and if you have strong hypotheses around how to improve those gaps, right? So it's not, it's sort of not one size fits all where it's like, okay, start with ad copy or, start with landing pages. It really depends. So if I were to come into kind of a new company or a new PPC account, I would first want to do a clear audit, do a heuristic analysis and really understand, okay, where do we feel that you lay out all the steps of the user experience? Where do we feel that people are converting at an appropriate rate or an adequate rate? And where do we believe there is the biggest drop off? I can give an experience from Grammarly in particular.
Stories are great.
For us, since we launched freemium, which was about a year and a half ago, prior to that, we were sort of a premium only product. Now we have a free offering as well. We had a funnel that essentially asks you to install the product, specifically the browser extension. And then afterwards, we asked you to create an account. And that allows you to get more out of the product than if you were using it anonymously without that account. We had a challenge. We saw a pretty big drop-off rate between the install and the sign-up form. And once we kind of analyzed our funnel, we thought that that's where the biggest opportunity lied. When you see that, you have to say, okay, is there a strong hypothesis for why that may be the case? Because anytime you go in with a test, you need to have a strong hypothesis. And we figured that, we're not really communicating clearly enough why people need an account. People are accustomed to installing browser extensions and just being on their merry way. So why exactly are we asking for an account? And so we started kind of constructing different value propositions, different messaging around why an account creation is an important part of the process. We learned that because we did a thorough analysis of our entire funnel, understanding where the biggest gaps are.
And getting from that free version of the product to the paid version, I mean, that's the golden question that every single person...
That's how we make money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very, very important. Yep. How much of articulating the value proposition in an accurate way, a way that was conversion friendly, how much of that actually took place within your ads and the subsequent landing pages? And how much of that also was very, very top of funnel versus maybe retargeting?
Yeah, great question. So the nature of our product is such that to a large extent it sells itself.
I can certainly agree with that.
Yeah, it's a persistent product, right? It's there with you. You use your browser, you write emails, you post on social media every day. So Grammarly is there. And so for us, the first key was making sure that the value of premium is communicated clearly within the product. The product is where we have the most time with the user, right? So how do we communicate the value of premium in a way that doesn't take away from the free product, right? But also consistently reinforces the value of the premium product, right? So that's where we focus. But we also supplement our in-product messaging with email and also with retargeting as well. So we do have retargeting campaigns that target free users specifically with a premium product.
One of the things I've actually seen, and I imagine this might be some form of retargeting, you have these excellent YouTube ads running right now that are awesome. And when I was working for myself and I had my eyes open for the right full-time opportunity, there was this one that I saw that I believe was geared towards job seekers for improving writing on their resumes or cover letters or whatever it may be. What kinds of interesting results are you seeing from these video ads?
Yeah, no, video advertising has been really, really crucial for us. It's, performing well as a direct response channel. It's also providing a substantial brand lift, right? We're seeing that there's just overall broader brand awareness of Grammarly. We're seeing that reflected in things like brand searches, which we're then able to capitalize on with ads as well as with organic listings. I think video is definitely something we plan to double down on.
Yuriy, given the nature of Grammarly's product as a writing improvement tool, I think it's interesting to hear from someone who works for the company and also has such a deep knowledge of advertising and growth marketing. How do you find the right copy for your ads and your landing pages? How much of it is A/B testing? How much of it is persona development? Where exactly do you start?
I think it's sort of a intersection of multiple disciplines, right? So on the one hand, brand and strategic thinking play a huge part because, in our case, for instance, we see ourselves as a lifestyle aspirational brand where we want to really focus on benefits that we bring to people's lives that may not be immediately associated with a product like ours, right? So we are trying to break out of sort of the utility category and be viewed as a lifestyle aspirational product. Think of it as like a Fitbit for your writing.
Yeah, and the nuances of that as far as language is concerned and how you're using that in a lot of your top of funnel marketing, especially with ads and then your subsequent landing pages. It's really interesting.
Yeah, one big evolution for us is that before our copy and all of our copy experiments were more feature focused, right? We correct for 250 plus types of errors. You get vocabulary recommendations, et cetera, right? So we would sort of test a lot of features and we were hesitant about testing more aspirational messaging like achieve better results, advance in your career faster, right? So more kind of like results based. We felt that it wasn't going to be relevant enough. People were not going to really relate to it. Obviously the power of testing, especially if you have a high tempo experiment framework set up, as you can test things pretty quickly. So we realized that people actually were, even bottom of the funnel users were pretty receptive to aspirational messaging, and in many cases, it had beaten out more feature-focused copy.
It's really interesting to think about when you're going from this feature-heavy copy to really talking about aspirational stuff. What surprised you, or what were some of the things you noticed when you guys made that change?
Well, for one, we noticed that in many cases, our worries were unfounded, right? We did not see a drop-off in conversions or in performance that we had thought we would see. We also learned sort of the power of sequential advertising, right? A lot of, whether you're focusing more on features, whether you're focusing more on the aspirational value that the product brings to people's lives, it depends on where people are in their consideration phase. So you'll notice that a lot of our kind of awareness-generating collateral, right? So like some of those YouTube videos, even our video strategy uses sequential advertising tactics where, kind of the top of the funnel videos are going to be more aspirational. They're going to show somebody who's really succeeding professionally or succeeding academically, right? And having this like high level of confidence, right? And as, folks who are already aware of Grammarly, that's where we'll start bringing in more feature focused stuff. Like you can do this and this and this, and it integrates with all these places. And here's how it's going to save you time. And then bottom of the funnel is when we get even more nitty gritty into like, here's exactly what the product interface looks like. Here's how, you use the product. Here's what other people are saying about the product. I think the power of sequential advertising is something that we're really able to hone, once we start experimenting with aspirational messaging.
Sequential advertising, especially with how you're balancing aspirational versus feature-focused messaging, is a tremendously powerful form of personalization. So do you think that this is an underutilized approach that could be taken more often by people who are running digital ads?
Two things. I do think it's fairly underutilized. And then I also think that when it is utilized, there is a fair number of advertisers out there who understand it conceptually, but have a hard time really measuring it, right? So they'll do it just based on faith, right? Like, for instance, we need to invest in video because that's how you drive brand awareness.
Because everyone tells us to.
Right? So how do you actually tie it into conversions? How do you tie it back to conversions? How do you measure it? How do you justify it? For a company like ours, it's in our DNA, right? We're bootstrapped, so we've always had to focus on profitable and responsible growth. It wasn't growth at any cost. So that's sort of been kind of a forcing function in a way for us to, how do we balance being bold and audacious while still keeping an eye on ROI? I would say that fortunately, we're bootstrapped, but we're fairly successful. So we have built up some, appetite and tolerance for running tests and testing things that may not work. We can stomach those kind of things, right? But we still approach it in a very kind of data-driven way.
Yeah, and you've been doing it since the beginning too, which makes it much easier to continue doing it as opposed to starting to test once you've got this whole thing already built out.
Yep.
Back to the space as a whole, what do you think is coming to advertising? What's coming to PPC? What changes are we going to see in the next maybe 5 years, 10 years even?
Yeah. You're seeing a lot more top of the funnel and awareness channels, like paid channels. Like I think video advertising is growing, and the spend in video advertising is growing, really, really, really quickly. What you're going to see with video and what we're seeing is that you're able to generate literally like millions and millions of impressions. I mean, you can just go, this information is publicly available. You can go into our YouTube account. You can look at some of our ads. We have a couple of ads with north of 80 million views. And just for comparison's sake, I think Pepsi's most viewed commercial on YouTube has like 40 million views.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
It's the Dr. Drew where you have Kyrie Irving play like an old guy. But my point is that when you're generating that kind of awareness as you can with video, you're gonna set off kind of like a tsunami, right? Because a lot of people had seen your brand. What do they do then, right? They may search for it. They may encounter it somewhere else, and that will ring a bell. So when you have those kind of awareness channels with that broad of reach, it's important to really understand multi-touch attribution, right? So I think that there's going to be a lot of activity around multi-touch attribution, cross-device attribution, right? We're definitely living in a multi-device world. Those are the things that I know they've been saying have been coming for a while, but a lot of people still have a really hard time understanding cross-device attribution and understanding multi-touch attribution.
Yuriy, with the knowledge and expertise that you have, is there some sort of product or process that doesn't currently exist that you would like to see released to solve this cross-device and multi-touch attribution problem, even if it's unrealistic with our existing technology or whatever?
Yeah, probably, like, I would want to see some kind of, if we go really, really deep into fantasy land, I'd want to see some kind of multi-touch tracking that accounts for offline as well as online,
like billboard advertising, traditional advertising.
Right. Yeah. Maybe some kind of chip that's implanted, or maybe it's some kind of wearable device. I think there are some underlying technology already exists, but it just has not been sort of mass produced.
Yeah.
That's something that's, I think, bugging us data-driven marketers quite a bit. It's like, well, word of mouth. How do you measure that? Yes, you can survey people, but that's, probably not the most reliable way.
Are you guys actually running billboards right now?
No, but it is something that we may look in the not so distant future, as well as potentially doing TV, which is another, another tricky one.
The thing is, I see some of these ads on Unibuses here in San Francisco, and after enough time, sometimes I actually remember these companies. It does happen on a somewhat regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, with something like that, like a billboard, or you're looking oftentimes to measure lift. So what you want to try to do is you want to try, at least that's sort of like the best practice, right? Is you want to try to pick certain geographies, right? Fairly narrow geographies, and run like a really high frequency campaign in those geographies, and see if you see a commensurate lift in conversions or visits or activity coming from those zip codes. That's kind of the conventional wisdom around that. But two things, like you have to pick a geography where you're likely to see that lift, for that lift to be measurable. And you're also going to have to probably invest quite a bit to create that high frequency during that time period, whether it's billboards or it's, TV ads.
Well, I'm going to keep an eye out for the billboards if you ever start running ads on the public transit systems here in San Francisco. Let's turn back to Grammarly a little bit and the expertise that your product offers, what you and your team are so focused on here, and that is writing and written content. Do you think that marketers are missing out on an opportunity because of poorly written content? Because we all know it's out there. There is some really horribly written content out there.
Obviously, I'm pretty biased, right? Because I've been conditioned to really pay, having worked at Grammarly for almost 5 years, to really pay attention to how effectively something is communicated in written form. It's not just grammar, right? It's just, are you stating things in the most concise, relatable way? I do think that the quality of written content is something that a lot of folks underestimate, including folks working in content and working in marketing. We've done a variety of studies and joint studies that we've done with different companies that go on to prove that better writing leads to better results. We did a joint study with Redfin that showed that listings that are written more effectively, that have fewer mistakes, tend to sell quicker. Right? We've done a study using LinkedIn data showing that folks with better written profiles, it seems to positively correlate with faster career ascension, right? So there's definitely a lot of data out there, and we view that our purpose in the world is really to educate the mass consumer on the importance of effective written communication. And to your point, marketers are no different. We do think that marketers are a huge target segment for us at Grammarly and can benefit a ton from our product, which is free, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It's free, and as someone who uses it and as someone who is a marketer, I highly, highly recommend that you certainly check that out. On that note, right before we wrap up, how can we as marketers and the audience of this podcast check out Grammarly? We like to ask everyone who comes on the show, Yuriy, to let us know what we can do for you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say probably two big things. One, would love for them to give the product a shot. I think that it can really, really improve their lives in a meaningful way. But also we'd love to learn from them as far as what they like about the product, what they don't like, what we can improve. I think marketers, and I'm assuming that's the majority of the audience here, is a market that we're really plan to focus on, and content creators in general. So the more qualitative feedback we can get from them, the better the product will be long term.
And on that note, if people do want to give you that qualitative feedback, is there a specific way that they can reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best way to do it is through the support icon right in the product itself. And we have the product team has a very strong, streamlined relationship with the support team. So all of that feedback,
very important.
Yeah, gets funneled in the right place and prioritized accordingly. And the other thing is, of course, I'll do kind of a shameless plug here.
Yeah, of course. Right? Shameless plugs are good.
We're growing very, very quickly. We've just crossed 8 million active users on Chrome alone. We're probably one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing Chrome extension. We're the only extension at our scale that has a 5-star rating in Chrome. So that's pretty impressive. We, again, are growing very quickly. We're a company of a little over 100 across 2 offices, Kyiv, Ukraine, and San Francisco, California. We're hiring. We probably have close to 30 openings right now, 5 on the marketing team, the growth team alone. So check us out on grammarly.com/jobs. You can also shoot me a note directly if you're interested at Yuriy, Yuriy @grammarly.com.
And I will say, just from a very brief observational point of view, the view in this office is pretty spectacular. So you'd be lucky to be here.
Yeah, no, it is pretty sweet.
Cool. Yuriy, once again, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. Cheers to better marketing for you guys and everybody else out there, and we hope to see you around soon.
Thanks for having me, Ander. Pleasure.
Here are the takeaways from our conversation with Yuriy Timen. Sequential advertising and adjusting the value proposition to where your target customers are in the buying cycle is a highly effective form of personalization. There is a major difference in aspirational copy compared to feature-focused copy, or put another way, emotional versus informational value propositions. While aspirational copy is likely to attract a top-of-funnel audience in the awareness phase of the buying cycle, content and copy focused on specific product features might be more effective towards the bottom of the funnel in the consideration phase. Even so, Grammarly found that aspirational value propositions worked in the bottom of the funnel as well. Make sure that your value proposition is clearly communicated within the product itself, in addition to all of the advertising and any other engagement you have with your users. After all, it is where you spend the most time with your users, and you should take advantage of it accordingly. Quality written content is important. Paying attention to how something is communicated in the written form can dramatically boost your conversion rates. The data and studies indicate that better writing leads to better results. I think I made it pretty clear that I'm a huge fan of Grammarly and what they do, and all of the work that Yuriy and his team have put into it. What's especially cool is experiencing this sequential advertising as a user and being able to reflect on it in hindsight with Yuriy's guidance. That alone, as a marketing professional, I think is a great reason for you to check out the product. There is a link to it in the show notes page with a transcript for each and every episode at instapage.com/podcast. I also really appreciated Yuriy's thoughts on the future of multitouch attribution, which will continue into the next episode with a conversation featuring Guillaume Caban, VP of Growth at Segment, one of the coolest companies that's changing the way we interact with data. Guillaume has some really interesting ideas that actually might contribute to solving the multi-touch attribution problem by creating more reliable impression and view-through rates. I think he might be onto something big, so make sure you come back around for the next episode. If you have any thoughts or questions about anything Yuriy and I talked about that you would like to share, please feel free to reach out. You're more than welcome to email me. It is ander@instapage.com, ANDER at instapage.com, and the rest of my team would love to hear from you as well. So come say hello over on social media, over at instapage.com, and while you're there, check out some of the resources that we prepared for you on advertising personalization, lead generation, and marketing trends to help our goal of helping you lower the cost of customer acquisition. On that note, my name is Ander. Cheers to your future success, and cheers to better marketing. I will talk to you soon.
Advertising influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.